Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be talking about drum sounds. Yes, that is true. Drum sounds, drum fills. So basically, I was asked a question about drum fills. How do you make your drum fills? And then we got a little more specific. How do you make a drum fill that sounds like it belongs with the rest of your drums? And the answer, of course, is you use those drums. But then what do you do to make those drums sort of stand out and be different? So I have a basic example right here. We're going to get more complicated as we go. But here it is. So we have this rhythm, right? It's playing in the background of our track. It's providing the rhythm. And then, of course, the most basic element of this is you simply chop it up and make a more syncopated, complex rhythm. And that will be perceived as a fill. And it can sound really cool. So that's that sort of a thing's a basic 101 approach. Whereas you have this basic rhythm going and you want to accent it with different rhythms. The thing you need to do when you have something like this is you need to create a spot for it. If you have a fill in a weird spot, then it's not going to work. The more complicated rhythm may actually do more harm than good. So they and the people who made the loop, they actually have just a little reverse, which can be a very, very dynamic and effective thing. Sometimes we get like too complicated and throw all these things into our fill and it ends up sounding dumb. I've done that lots of times. So I'm going to assume that we're going for like a half bar fill or a 1 bar fill, somewhere in that range. So to do this method, it's really simple. All you do is you clone it, right? You chop it up to the part that you want, and then you chop up. What I will do is I'll generally chop up in, this is important, being conscious of this chopping part. I will chop it up like this, and then I ask myself, what kind of effects am I looking at? If I want a phaser, do I want to phase just this part? Do I not? So the first step is get a cool rhythm, but occasionally the rhythm may also be determined by your effects. So there's this sort of extra level of thinking going on. But let's assume that we just want to create a cool rhythm at first. We're not going to go into this more complicated thinking ahead to create a really cool sound that way. We're going to do it this way. So we have this, and when we're chopping it, we want to be aware. We're chopping it in these eighths. It's not going to be this most interesting break. So I'll go ahead and do a 16th note thing right here and leave that one as an eighth. And then this last one, I'm going to chop that up into thirds. So we get this dun, dun, dun. Because that could be pretty cool. We'll do some borrowed rhythms. So I'll go to 1/3 beat, and I'll chop it up into thirds. Next, I'm going to just go over to my slider tool and sort of make a cool rhythm. So we'll do something like this. And yeah, sort of a stutter thing. It's kind of cool. Oh, we have an unusual. Oh, that's because I'm looking at this in 3rd beat. Okay, that was cool. That was an unexpected cool thing, but that's another point. If you're moving around in 3rd beat and you slide things over by thirds, you're going to get really cool sort of syncopation things. So that was an example. So that's basically what I was saying when I chopped him up here, except for now I'm sliding. I had not considered this element of it. I'm sliding it in straight time when I'm in cell, and I'm sliding it in triple time when I'm in 3rd beat. So you'll get that's worth experimenting with. Kind of a cool idea. And then here, let's change that into this. You see, we're taking the end of this one and moving it into that. So it'll be sort of an interesting sort of mixing drum samples. And then this one, we only really need to change the middle to get the triple feel. And we'll do that. This guy actually needs to go off at the end. Otherwise, it'll mess up our feel. Sometimes having repeating patterns is a good idea too. So that's sort of a thing. It's less complicated. If you put like complicated rhythms, especially if you're borrowing something, it's easier for the listener to pick up a cue like that than it is for them to try and process this really complicated rhythm. So here we have this. Now, maybe you don't like that do sound. Maybe you were like, oh, I want something a little different. So let's try and make this a little more dynamic. Let's throw processing into the mix. So let's take this and let's just slide around and find a different thing that might be a little cooler. I like that. And that already has a little bit of what I was going to do. But let's make this unique. So we're going to make each one of these unique by hitting M. And we're going to send these all to the same thing. So we're going to hit that, hit type, and we're going to put in a track I'm not using, which we'll go safe. We'll put 80. I know I'm not using 80. So click. 80, click. Actually, I could have made one unique, but they each have their own little, they each sound different. So that's why I did all 3 separate, if you're wondering, instead of just cloning it over 3 times. So we're going to go to 80, which is not named. So we're going to put this as drum process. You hold shift and click on the name to get that, if you're wondering how to do that. Because I see people do that all the time. When I was new, I was like, how do they do that? I don't know. And I'd have to go look it up, and then I'd forget. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to add a filter movement. So I'm going to use the parametric EQ2 instead of the free filter or other filters, just because it's pretty easy to do with EQ, and I know I'll keep my high end. So I want to do a high pass and bring it in. So I'm going to do something like that, and I want it to be pretty gentle. It's just going to be an effect. So I'm going to have that here, and I'm going to automate it, and I'm going to switch back to my pencil tool and simply bring this down. And there you have it. It's been low passed. So that's kind of a cool effect that happens. One thing we want to be aware of is we don't want this to be too steep because we don't want it to consume the low end. We still want to be able to EQ our drums after. But these have also been separated from the rest of our clip, so it'll probably be okay. So now we've got sort of a drum loop, drum fill thing. So that's pretty cool. Next, we're gonna do some further processing. So let's say that, hey, we want this section to sound different. We want it to be its own thing. So one of the things that I'm gonna do just to help workflow along is I'll keep this section as a thing, but I'm gonna slap a thing over my master and just record it. So I'm just gonna hit Control E to bring up an Edison, turn it on play, delete that thing I recorded by accident, and now when I play it, it will record everything going in there. Now this part, I don't want that. Cool. And I believe I got a click. I hope I didn't get a click, but I think I did. So I'm going to Control C, Control A, delete, Control V, and play it. Just be sure. No, I'm fine. So, okay. So that's what's going on there. Now we can mute these. So I don't necessarily want to remove them. So I'm going to hold down Alt on the, what is that, right side of my keyboard. I'm always losing track of that. And simply drag and mute those. So cool. And we've even incorporated our filter movement. So now we no longer need that. If we wanted, we could go disable that and save ourselves some resources, CPU resources. But what we're going to do now is we are going to give this a more aggressive feel so that people know that it is a drum fill. So we're going to send it to its own track. I'm going to rename it drum fill. And I'm going to make a sidechain bus for it, or not a sidechain, just a send bus. And I'm going to name this, actually, you know what? We have a compression bus. Nah, I'm going to name this one drum fill parallel. And so this is going to sound really different. So the first thing I'm going to do, it's a really basic move. I'm just going to EQ it. That way it sounds different, a little more aggressive, maybe bring up the gain a little bit, because ideally this is going to be in its own spot. It's going to have a moment to shine. So we're deliberately bringing out the drums on the mix for this one spot to create interest. So we can go ahead and, give the drums a little more attention here. Meaning not more attention as in we're paying more attention, that we're going to draw the listener's attention to them. Just being clear. So the high end is already pretty fine where it's at. If I boost that, I'm going to regret it. So I'm going to look to add a little more punch to the middle, so somewhere around here. And I'm going to look to boost a little spot in the kick to try and give the kick a little extra boost. Now, you would do some sweeping and find spots that sound extra good, but this is reasonably okay. So without it, you notice a big difference? So it pops out just a little bit more. Another indication, hey, the drums are coming forward. The other, now on our fill parallel, I'm going to try 2 things. I'm going to put a compressor on it. So first, we're going to go over here. We're going to load up I don't want to do Maximus because that's just going to be complicated. We have these, well, this is interesting. We could put a VC76. And basically, we're just going to crush it. Actually, not a VC76. Let's go Maximus. What the heck? So, because you guys probably have that. So we're going to just go ahead and do something like this. We're just going to crush it pretty heavy. We're going to even bring in some of this saturation. Bring it down. Cool. And again, this stuff's covered. Well, not again. I cover Maximus in the FL12 Effects series if you want to know more about this. Basically, we're just going to compress the living snot out of it, make a really fast attack, slow release, and that's it. And so we're gonna mix this in here. Now, the way FL does this is sort of a little unique. There's not like a send fader. This is your send fader. It's an interesting deal. But you see, we get that extra, we get a different feel if we get rid of it. So it just adds, it's a little more solid. And what we're going to do also, this would be interesting to stereo, which was, that's the way, well, that's merged, separated. We'll separate the mids and highs. Maybe not that much. So that way it fills up our spectrum. Something I'll do a lot is I'll do really intricate panning, like boom, 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 like, because that's cool. That's a moment where that stuff's sort of okay. So we could come in here, just control our panning. It's a really simple move, but it's so dynamic. We could just do something like this. Have this hit there. Have this hit there. Have that hit the middle. Let that ring through the middle. That, and then we'll go across the spectrum or across the stereo field. So on your headphones, it's a little obnoxious, but over monitors, it sounds way less obnoxious because you have the room and reflections and stuff. But if you don't want to be as obnoxious, you could simply open this up and change the min and the max to be a little more. That way you don't have to worry. It's like you're just scaling things back, essentially, sort of. Not really. But now you've opened it up to the stereo field. It's a lot more. It sounds just a lot more nice. Okay, so that's interesting with Maximus. And I've sort of included the distortion, but essentially we're just slamming it. We're not applying too much. Let's go ahead and slam it more. Then we'll bring it up in post. So it's a very common trick. It's called parallel compression. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of distortion to it. This can or cannot work out. I've seen it go both ways. In great ways and terrible ways. Just a little bit. I like that. So I'm going to tone down the amount though. Cool. And finally, on this, well, we could consider EQing. It's worth experimenting with reverb just a touch. I'm going to take down the dry. No, I want the dry in there. I'm going to take down the wet and just deal with the early reflections. So generally there's like 6 early reflection points. Unless you're, well, in this, it's also, I wonder if they do this. It should be determined by the number of reflective surfaces in your room. So I guess the diffusion parameter would control that. So we could bring it down. I don't know. So ideally there's 1, 2, there's like, I don't know. There's probably 5 or 6 early reflection points. In this case, there's a couple more. And if it does it like that, but I know the controls the early reflection point. So we're just going to turn that up and turn the decay down a little, 1 second, 0.7 seconds. And the dampening, I'm going to bring that up. So it creates sort of a cool space. If we get rid of it, it doesn't fill the space quite the same. So that's a really cool, just sort of a subtle thing. So without this, without this, because I don't want to mute that. Why did I just do that? I could just do this. Without this. So it's that little extra push into that sparkle territory that people struggle to get into. These are the kinds of things you do to get there. So there's our drum fill. Now that's just one, but that's one approach that I take. There are other ways. If we wanted to glitch, for example, let's say that we wanted to extend one of these, like time stretch it twice the length. So let's say that, hey, we want to do this. So we'll go ahead and chop this part and this part. And I just want to time stretch this. So I'm going to make it unique so that I don't affect the rest. Hit Shift M to enter stretch mode. And then I'm going to just stretch it out there. And I'll chop it so that it doesn't interfere with our cool click. So we get this. Now that may or may not be something you desire. Because it's being resampled, it's interesting that it has to still stretch in time. That is a weird deal. But we could try mono. So we could change these. and get some pretty cool effects. Maybe that was like too long. Maybe we want, it a little bit shorter. Oh, you know what we could try doing? I'm having too much fun. Too much fun producing. Just chop it like that, and let's stretch this part out. So that'd be kind of a weird deal. And then we'll clone it one more time. So we'll copy this. Whoops. Put it right there. We'll stretch this one. Oh, that stretches all of it. Make it unique one more time. Stretch that. And then stretch this guy. Whoops. Make him unique. We're getting a little micro editing, but I think it's fun. And then we're going to chop him right there. It'd be wiser to put these random chops probably on the beat. But hey, this is a textural thing. It's pretty close. I don't know. Maybe or may not. It just depends on what you want to do. So you can get pretty weird. This is like more of a breakcore type move than a, I don't know, dance move. But maybe that's what you need in your fill. Let's make it sound cool. And then, hey, it works quite nicely into our song. So we got a cool fill. So anyways, that's how I go about some fills. It's how you make just interesting things. You can do this with any loops. Now, we stuck with one loop with the same drum, so it fits into our drums really nicely. But you see how we changed space a little bit, augmented it to bring it out. And of course, we're listening to this. Ideally, there'll be like a whole bunch of crap happening here. So when this happens, it'll really shine. But another cool, interesting thing is grabbing a bunch of random loops and trying to make something out of that. That is pretty fun too. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe, support me on Patreon, and have a blessed day.